Every Friday night, I take an Uber home from my office downtown. It's a ritual that helps me unwind from the week, allowing me to savor a few moments of solitude before returning to my cramped apartment. Last Friday was no different, or so I thought. The notification chimed, and I saw that my ride had arrived. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver's name was Michael, and he had a near-perfect rating. I climbed into the back seat and greeted him. He nodded curtly, eyes fixed ahead. As we merged into traffic, I noticed something odd. The interior was unusually cold, like the chill of a forgotten basement. The windows were tinted darker than usual, making the city outside appear as a blur of shadows and neon streaks. The silence in the car was thick, punctuated only by the soft hum of the engine. I tried to make small talk, asking Michael about his night, but he remained unresponsive. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles pale against the leather. I decided to check my phone, seeking distraction, but there was no signal. The screen displayed "no service," which was strange for this part of town. Minutes passed, and the route on the app showed we were deviating from the usual path. We were heading into an unfamiliar part of the city, where the buildings were derelict and the streetlights flickered like dying embers. My anxiety grew. I asked Michael where we were going, but he didn't answer. His eyes, reflected in the rearview mirror, were hollow and lifeless. Panic set in. I tried the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Child lock," I muttered under my breath, cursing my oversight. My mind raced as I pounded on the partition, demanding to be let out. Michael's face remained a mask of eerie calm, unyielding and inhuman. The car came to a stop in front of an abandoned warehouse. Michael turned to me, and for the first time, he spoke. His voice was a whisper, cold and distant.
"This is the end of the line."
Before I could react, the car doors unlocked with a soft click. I stumbled out, my breath visible in the frigid air. The warehouse loomed before me, a cavernous maw of darkness. Michael's car sped off, leaving me stranded. Desperation clawed at my throat as I fumbled for my phone. Still no service. I dialed 911, but the call wouldn't connect. My only option was to seek shelter inside the warehouse. The interior was a labyrinth of rusted machinery and broken windows. The stench of decay permeated the air. I wandered deeper, the faint sound of dripping water echoing around me. My footsteps seemed to attract a presence, an unseen watcher lurking in the shadows. I turned a corner and froze. There, on the grimy floor, lay dozens of phones, all with their screens shattered and smeared with blood. Panic surged through me. I wasn't the first to be brought here. I wouldn't be the last. A low growl emanated from the darkness. I backed away, but it was too late. Cold, clammy hands clamped down on my shoulders, and a voice rasped in my ear.
"Welcome to your final ride."
My scream echoed through the warehouse, swallowed by the oppressive night. Every night, when I finished my shift at the hospital, I took an Uber home. It was my routine, a small comfort amidst the chaos of the ER. But last Monday, my routine changed, forever. I got into the car, the smell of stale air freshener hitting me immediately. The driver, a man in his 50s, with a receding hairline and dark eyes, gave me a quick nod. His name was Greg. I barely noticed him as I slid into the back seat, exhausted. I was scrolling through my phone when I noticed something odd. The usual route to my apartment wasn't being followed. "Excuse me," I said, leaning forward. "I think you missed the turn." Greg's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. They were cold, empty.
shortcut?
he replied, his voice flat. I felt a prickle of unease.
I don't think so. Just follow the GPS.
He didn't respond, just kept driving. The city lights grew sparser, the streets quieter. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was racing. I checked my phone. No signal. Of course.
Stop the car.
I demanded.
Now.
He ignored me. Panic set in. I reached for the door handle, but it didn't budge. Child lock. I pounded on the window, screamed for help, but the streets were deserted. Greg's eyes flicked to the mirror, watching me with that same unnerving emptiness. The car pulled into an abandoned warehouse district. He stopped the car and turned off the engine. The silence was deafening. Greg turned to face me, a twisted smile creeping across his lips.
Get out,
he ordered, unlocking the doors with a click. I bolted out of the car, stumbling as I ran towards the nearest warehouse. The door was slightly ajar. I slipped inside, the darkness swallowing me. My breathing was loud in the stillness. I could hear Greg's footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. I hid behind a stack of crates, trying to steady my breath. The sound of his footsteps grew louder, closer. I peeked around the corner and saw him, a large knife gleaming in his hand, reflecting the faint moonlight seeping through broken windows.
You can't hide forever,
he called out, his voice echoing.
I'll find you.
I clutched my phone, praying for a signal. Finally, one bar. I dialed 911, whispering frantically into the receiver.
Please, help me. He's going to kill me. Please.
The operator's voice was faint.
Stay calm. We're tracing your call. Help is on the way.
But I knew it would be too late. Greg's footsteps stopped, and in the eerie silence, I knew he was close. Too close. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Greg cursed, turning towards the noise. I seized the moment, bolting from my hiding spot and sprinting towards the exit. The police arrived just as I stumbled into the open, their lights flashing, illuminating the horror on Greg's face. They arrested him, and I was safe. But the terror of that night never left me. Every time I step into an Uber now, I see Greg's empty eyes in the mirror, hear his footsteps in my nightmares. The ride home was supposed to be the end of my day, a simple journey. Now, it's a haunting reminder of how quickly everything can go wrong. Every night, Jenna would climb into her old, reliable Honda Civic, flip on her Uber app, and prepare for her nightly shifts. Her days as a nurse left her exhausted, but the extra money from driving helped her stay afloat. Each ride was a small adventure, but the night of July 13th would become a story she'd never forget. The app buzzed with a pickup request from a part of town Jenna usually avoided, an area known for its eerie, abandoned buildings. She hesitated, but accepted the ride, needing the fare. The address led her to a dilapidated house at the end of a dark, overgrown street. The front porch light flickered intermittently, casting unsettling shadows. She checked the app again.
Pick up Anthony.
As Jenna waited, the door creaked open, and a figure emerged. Anthony was tall, shrouded in a long, dark coat, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. A chill ran down Jenna's spine as he climbed into the back seat without a word. The air inside the car grew colder, and Jenna's breath misted up the rearview mirror.
Where to?
Jenna asked, her voice quivering slightly. Anthony's reply was a barely audible whisper.
Just drive.
She did as instructed, glancing nervously in the mirror. Anthony sat perfectly still, his hat shadowing his face. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly. Jenna drove past familiar landmarks that seemed to blur and distort. The streetlights flickered ominously, as if something was disrupting their light. Without warning, Anthony spoke again, his voice now echoing as if coming from a deep well.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Jenna's heart raced.
Not really? Why?
Anthony's voice dropped to a chilling whisper.
I'm not here to take a ride.
The temperature in the car plummeted. Jenna's breath came out in frantic puffs.
What do you mean?
In the rearview mirror, Anthony's face was now visible. A pale, gaunt visage with hollow eyes and a ghostly grin.
I was never supposed to leave that house.
Jenna's panic surged. She glanced back, but Anthony was gone. The back seat was empty. The chilling air remained, and Jenna's mind raced. She sped up, desperate to escape the malevolent presence. At the end of the street, she found herself back at the same dilapidated house. The porch light flickered, and then went out completely. Jenna's hands shook as she turned off the car and bolted from it, stumbling back to the safety of the streetlights. The next morning, Jenna checked the app again. There was no record of Anthony, just an empty void where his ride should have been. She never received payment, nor did she find any record of the bizarre ride. Now, whenever she's on a late-night shift, Jenna's gaze lingers nervously in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those hollow eyes staring back. And every time she drives past that abandoned house, the flickering porch light seems to beckon her with an unspoken warning.